Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. And now to honor America, please join in the singing of our national anthem. Representing the three-time Stanley Cup champion New Jersey Devils, Arlette.
I feel like I'm at a game. Oh my gosh. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Beat Devils 3-0 and undefeated Sunday. Everybody in Facebook Live, give me a big woo! Everybody on Periscope and Twitter, give me a big woo! Everybody that has subscribed to YouTube Live, give me a big woo! And the 2 followers on Twitch, we're newly on Twitch. Give me a big woo!
They're probably like, what game are they playing right now? I don't understand. Are they playing
right?
NHL? Are they playing NHL right now?
I know.
Blades of Steel.
And hey, let's not forget.
Blades of Steel.
Awesome.
And let's not
awesome
forget the Let's Go Devils podcast fans that are being safe right now while driving and not watching, but just streaming the live audio on letsgodevils.com. You can find us on the iHeartRadio app. You can also find us on iTunes. And we're looking at other places to distribute the Let's Go Devils podcast. Guys, this is a big, big, big podcast tonight. I mean, this is huge.
I'd agree.
First off, the Devils are the only solid, undefeated team in the NHL. And what I mean by solid, they have a solid 6 points, 3-0. They didn't win in overtime. They didn't crush their team with a little skills shootout. Ooh, yeah, we're going to get the extra point. Think we really won the game. No. They beat their opponents one by one, starting in Sweden, then coming back to the Rock. That 6-hour time zone difference, did it really have an effect on the team or our guest, Steve Cangialosi, which he will be on later in about 10, 15 minutes? Did it have effect on the Devils team? No. 6-0 beatdown over the defending Stanley Cup champions, Washington Capitals. And then today, again at the Rock, playing the Western Conference. Ooh, Brent Burns. Ooh, that new guy. Erik Karlsson came back in the third period. 3-2 victory over the San Jose Sharks. Guys, I am so fired up. It's a high-energy show today. We have Steve Cangialosi on later from MSG Networks, the Devils play-by-play announcer. But let me tell you why I'm really fired up. Last week on the podcast, I said Palmieri has on pace to be 164 goal scorer this season. He's keeping that pace. He's backing up. Beer Baron, I'm going to shoot off to you. I'm out of breath right now. I need to recover. Guys, take it away.
Don't hurt yourself, Sam.
Dude, honestly, we were talking about this before the show started. Palmieri with 6 goals in 3 games. He's only 4 behind Austin Matthews, who has 10 goals in 6 games. He is an incredible pace right now. And every time that Palmieri scores a goal for the Devils, they're undefeated at this point. So, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better start to the season for him. It's funny because Taylor Hall doesn't even have a goal yet, and they're still winning. And they're beating teams. The 3 teams. Look at the 3 teams they beat so far. Edmonton, who's trying to have a bounce back year, the defending Stanley Cup champs, even though they were on a back-to-back, and then the perennial, bridesmaids, the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, it seems like every year Edmonton's looking to have a bounce back year. They never seem to get it. We've got a +10 goal differential. We've 14-4, 4 against. We knew the Devils were good last year. We knew they were high flying last year, and man, this year they're just coming in like they've learned so much from last year, and they took it with them. They battled back today, which is what you want to see in a young team, to be able to battle back, especially against good teams. Sam is absolutely correct. It's just we're not winning in overtime. We're not winning in a shootout where it could just be luck of the draw. We're really solidly defeating teams, especially the first 2 today. Like I said, coming back, from a goal down, was it twice today? And then having scoring the game winner in the third, that's just awesome.
Amazing.
You just hope that they keep this up. And typical in typical Devils fashion, when we have someone that's doing really well, there's always someone else doing that much better and having a ridiculous start to a season, like Austin Matthews.
100%, dude. And you know what's crazy is with everything that's going on right now, and I have to say the Facebook group is just blowing up right now. I have to make a couple of mentions. Somebody, Mike Post asked, what is the thoughts on the cost of Nylander? A lot. We'll just put it that way. If the Devils even entertain that, you're looking at a number 1 and probably some of your best prospects, probably Ty Smith. Wouldn't surprise me if they would ask for Will Butcher in that trade too. So you have to look at it like this. If you wanted to get Nylander, which would be amazing because he would help bolster this offense, but you have to do it at a reasonable price. Also in the group, everybody's 3. John says 3-0, goal difference of 10+, which is awesome. That's awesome. And Stacy said she was at the game today. That's we love to hear that kind of stuff because we love to hear like what your experience was at the games. Speaking of which, you had quite the adventure at the home opener. And I got to say, it was pretty awesome. Unfortunately, I was unable to go, but it was really cool to watch, through social media and everything else, like just all the people you got to meet and all that kind of fun stuff. So what was that like?
Yeah, opening night was great. First off, I got to meet one of our listeners, Henrik, who was in from Denmark, which that was really cool. Just the fact that we have people listening from across the world, which is really awesome. We did a bit of a trade, a podcast T-shirt, and he gave me a jersey for his local hometown team in Denmark, which was awesome. Is just so cool.
That was really cool.
It was really cool. I hung around with him and Robbie Manella, who became my personal photographer for the whole evening, which was great. It was really. It was. I thought one of the cool things was being able to show someone around on their first time at the Rock, which was really cool. It was the first time he made it here. He had gone to the game in Sweden, and then he was here at the Rock today or Thursday and today, and he even went to the Flyers Vegas game the other day too. So I know he's flying home now, or he should be flying home soon. So Henrik, safe travels home. But the rest of the night, I really didn't see a whole ton of the game because I was walking around trying to meet with everyone. I met up with Rob and his group and took a picture there. Arlette was there. I met up with Steve. Excuse me, not Steve. I met up with Pete. Got a picture with Pete. Gave him his shirt. Met up with Lacey. Gave her shirt. Got a picture with her. And just kind of walked around, worked the crowd. It was awesome. It was a ton of fun.
Guys, I want to break in because you talked about Henrik, the guy from Denmark that you met at the game. Yeah. Just so you know, I tested this last summer over the Pacific going to Hawaii. You can actually listen to the Let's Go Devils podcast live streaming on the plane if you have Wi-Fi. It actually works perfect. So
that's awesome.
Just a little bit plug. Eventually, we're going to have an easier way to listen while you're on your flight somewhere, and also our YouTube channel. Subscribe. That's all we want you guys to do. Okay, you guys
watch past episodes. You know.
Yep. Carry on.
Yeah, and then thanks, Sam. Yeah, and then being there, and then the Devils winning 6-0. And then Bobby and I got to go out on the ice afterwards, which if you haven't seen it, go to our Instagram. And I kind of did a video, just a video recap of being on the ice, and we won. And I got Bobby Manella's opinion on what he thought about the game and the victory.
True ass kicking.
It was just,
said.
Yeah. Those were his exact words. It was just a cool time, and I got to give a shout out to my buddy Kevin Adams for every opening night he gets a group of about 60. Between 50 and 60 people to go. And he always lets me tag along on the ice afterwards, which is how we got down there. So it was cool.
That's really cool. I got to say a big shout out to our buddy Rob. He's been one of our biggest fans from the day one, and is you got a chance to meet him, and he bought a T-shirt, which is pretty sweet because that goes right towards our fantastic $30 million jet. So thank you, Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. We're we're one shirt closer to that jet, and I'm sure
he already reserved a seat. So,
yeah, Rob, you have a seat reserved on the jet when we go to away games, and I'm sure Sam will put the graphic up at some point soon. But yeah, it was just Thursday night was really cool. Got to meet a lot of people. Got to talk with Trudy of the fan club, which was cool. So it's a bunch of stuff. It was great.
That's really awesome. So not to just jump right back into the game tonight and just how the season's been rolling. Keith Kincaid at certain points during this game, especially, bailed the Devils out. There was a couple of plays in particular where the score was tied 2-2, and the name of the Shark escapes me right now. But somebody basically walked in on the doorstep all alone, and he made a beautiful sprawling save. He has been absolutely solid, in the beginning of the season, and you got to start to think like when Corey Schneider is ready to come back, I'm going to ask you, being kind of the goaltender aficionado of the podcast, what do you do? Do you give Schneider a chance, or do you let Kincaid kind of roll through?
That's a tough one, and that's
and he's playing like a number one. He's playing like a number one.
I totally agree. He's playing like a number one. It's going to depend on it. It should be his to lose at this point, and Snyder's coming back from injury, and it's going to take him some time to get back into the swing of things, get back up to game speed. I would imagine they'll probably give him a game or two in Binghamton just to get him at game speed a little bit.
Who are 3-1? Thank you for whoever wrote that on the Facebook.
There we go. And you really have to just kind of go with the hot hand with when it comes to goaltending. And if Kincaid plays himself as the starter right now, he's the starter for right now. If maybe you start rolling Snyder in if you get some. I have to look at the schedule. Let me bring that up now. If there are any back-to-backs, I mean, back-to-backs are great to give Snyder a chance to get some starts, and then just kind of go with the whole. You have to go with the hot hand and who's playing well right now. Kincaid. I was critical of his first game in Sweden. I thought he made some really bumbling puck working mistakes playing the puck. It was just bad. But he definitely has. He's definitely come in and he's definitely played as a starter, getting that shutout against the Capitals, who have scored. What do they have? 12, 13, 14 going into that game?
They scored 13 goals going into that game, and I laughed because my brother from another mother, George Shelley, he wrote "Trade Schneider for Kovalchuk." LOL. So I mean,
Gina okay.
Says, and this is what's going to happen though: is Gina says trade Kovalchuk, trade Schneider. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to get rid of Schneider because they feel like he could be, used as trade bait. But then you're looking at this team and you say to yourself, outside of like getting another top scorer, what do you want to trade for? You know what I mean? Like, obviously you would always love a top 2 defenseman or a top 4 defenseman, but everything is really starting to gel with this team. If you look at the pairing of Mueller and Vatanen, for example, I don't know if it's just me, but they seem to be gelling so well. And they kind of like the way they move the puck. When Marcus Johansson scored that goal against the Capitals, that whole play started with those two kind of just going back and forth. And it just seems like they're going to be one of those pairs that you can heavily rely on. I think Vatanen's been showing so far this season, and we all understand it's only 3 games. It's not like we're insane. But you can see like there's certain things that are happening on this team that are gelling really well. That top line of Hall, Palmieri, and Heischer, even the line with Quenneville, Wood, and Zajac. Like there's things that are like clicking together that look so good. Jean-Sebastien D. Although he did steal a goal from Mueller today because it was going to trickle in, but I mean the dude has 2 goals
out of nowhere,
and he wasn't even on the team like 2 weeks before the season started. So
I know.
This season so far has gotten off to the right start.
I agree. And, one of the other things, too, that, when Snyder comes back, that he's a real valuable asset, and so is Eddie Lack at the same time, too. Keith Kincaid is a young kid, and he still has stuff to learn about the game and about managing games, managing himself. That's where a guy like Snyder, who's been in the league forever, who's been a backup, who's been a starter, it's invaluable. You need that presence behind a young goaltender in order to help them, mature completely.
Agreed.
Yep.
All right, Mr.
Sam, what do you got?
Well, I learned how to turn on my mic this time around, unlike last week.
Hey, learning. We're learning.
Yeah, we're learning. We're learning on the fly. I guess we need a little drum roll a little bit or something like that. Or I don't have that. Excellent. All right, Devils fans, everybody on Facebook Live, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube Live, and letsgodevils.com. Our next guest is one of the hardest working broadcasters in the business. I mean, guys, he just went out to Europe, covered 2 games for MSG Network, right? And cover the Devils in Switzerland, Sweden. Big wins. Comes back to New Jersey for the Devils home opener at Prudential Center. Again, another big win over the Stanley Cup champions, Washington Capitals, 6-0 victory. And today he covered for MSG the Devils San Jose game. But somehow he has graciously made time for us on the Let's Go Devils podcast, and we are very honored and appreciative of that. Steve Cangialosi is on the line with us right now. Steve, do you get the sense that the Devils are answering John Hines' challenge to take it to another level from just making the playoffs to a perennial Stanley Cup playoff contender?
Well, never mind John Hines' challenge. After that intro, my check is in the mail. That's the first thing, okay? Look, it's funny. We got into this dialogue a little bit on the post-game show today, and I kind of did a tongue-in-cheek when I was on with Bryce and Kenny about the whole Devils versus everybody mantra that was that was floated last year, and I wanted to know what those guys thought. Is it real, or is it something that's just good verbiage for us when we talk about the team? And the two of them felt there was really something behind that, you know, this chip on the shoulder mentality can very often be a very good thing. And I think that that's something that John Hines has sold his team on again. You know, the early message from training camp was, look where we were last year. And we are only 12 months removed from people in the league picking us to finish 30th or 31st out of the 31 teams in the league. And look what we did last year. And he brought that challenge back to the table last year. And the more I think about it, guys, and I thought about it more on the ride home from the rink today, it can be a very, very rallying thing for this group. And I think they've responded very well. It's a very well-coached team. And I think when you are in the position that they are, that this is a team that defied expectations last year, that made the Stanley Cup playoffs, and now the challenge is out there to take it to the next level. That's a carrot that's not insignificant, that's dangling in front of them. I think this is a very motivated group, and I think they've responded in such fashion in these first three games. They're 3-0. They're the only perfect team right now in the National Hockey League. Granted, that's a short body of work, but look beyond that and just look at the games that they've played and ask yourself, does it pass the eye test, what they've done here for the first three games? And I think that everybody would agree that there's a lot to take from this opening week of the season and couch it very positively. And I think this is a group that would be very proud looking back at the first 180 minutes of hockey that it's played this season and looking at that as a base moving forward where they say, hey, maybe we've got something good going on again this year. So to answer your question, yeah, they've responded to that challenge initially. Absolutely.
Steve, I have to say thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. This is beyond just an honor. It's like, you know, the butterflies in my stomach are dancing around, I'll tell you that much. But watching this team, is there anything that has surprised you, whether it be, you know, the unfortunate injury to Brad and then John Sebastian Day coming in and stepping up and already having 2 goals? Or is there anything that really surprised you about the team so far?
Nothing that's really surprised me. I expected this group to play well out of the gate. I didn't necessarily think that that would translate to 3 wins as it has here and maximum points in the first week. But what we started the show with today, guys, was simply this, that with all the success Kyle Palmieri has had early and, you know, what started out today as 4 goals in 2 games and now is 6 goals in 3 games, the big story right now with this group is balance. Andy Green had an assist on the goal earlier today, the second goal by Kyle Palmieri. And that means right now that after 3 games, the only 2 positional players, non-goaltenders, who haven't registered a point are John Quenneville and Pavel Zacha. And I can't sit here right now and tell you that either one of those 2 players have played poorly in the first 3 games. So there's balance here. It's coming from the blue liners, too. Every defenseman who's dressed for a game this year has registered at least a point, and that's the positive thing. The only thing that I kind of looked at and said, what are we looking at here in the opening week, was Keith Kincaid in this role, knowing that out of the gate he was going to get a bunch of starts consecutively here. And the first 2 games for Keith were very manageable. If you look at the first 2 wins over Edmonton and then the 6-0 win over Washington, the Devils largely kept the heat off Keith. And you look at those 2 games, and he faced a total of 40 shots cumulatively in those first 2 games. Well, today it's a little different. Today he had to face 39 shots. And of the 37 saves that he makes today, 6 would come in the final 2.5 minutes of the game. So I think looking at Keith here, that was the first time I looked at the goaltending performance today and saw it as something more than instrumental to the end result today. Keith Kincaid was fantastic. And if you look at what happened down the stretch today in the final moments of the game, the double save that he makes today in the final minute with pressure on. And it was such a weird dynamic to the game today because there was hardly any 5-on-5 play to the last 8 minutes of the game. The Devils had that 4-minute power play when Erik Karlsson went off, and then there were consecutive minors to the Devils. And you knew this would be a challenge to finish out regulation today. And Keith was extraordinary. And I wondered how he would handle this going into the season, knowing that the dynamic with Corey Schneider eventually coming back from injury, and maybe that's going to be the case for him in the next week and a half or so, he had to make the most, and he had to make a statement here in the opening games of the season, and he certainly did. And the only place that leaves us is the Devils, who have been very consistent when talking about their goaltending dynamic. We have two guys that we trust. John Hines and Ray Shero have done a lot to kind of diffuse any kind of goaltender controversy here. But what's happened here in the opening week is that Keith has spoken loudly with his play that, hey, I'm something a little bit more than your basic number two in the league. It's been an eye-opening performance here. And he's had a couple of miscues playing the puck, which is a Keith Kincaid strength, guys. I think he plays the puck traditionally very well. He's dodged some bullets here with respect to those situations, but his play overall has been very good, and that's been one of the real bullet points and headlines for me in this opening week of the season. They deserve to be 3-0, and Kincaid deserves to get a lot of kudos for what he's done so far.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you on Kincaid. Steve, this is Shorts Guy. I'm going to ask the obvious question. How was your trip to Europe? How was it being there with the team and seeing everything from the other side of the pond?
It was a long way away from home. NSG Network asked us to travel with the Devils to Winnipeg first, where they played their final preseason game in North America. So Kenny and I and some members of our crew just watched the game there, and then we traveled on to Europe with the Devils. I had never been to Bern, Switzerland, or Sweden, so the trip for me was going to be educational, number one. Bern, I did not realize, is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever walked. It's a basic, old European, beautiful walking and cycling city. So that part of it was very enjoyable for all of us. And we learned a lot about the Swiss Hockey League in the short time that we were there. We caught a game a couple of nights before the Devils actually played SC Bern in their preseason finale. For the team, more importantly, they set out this goal to really create a brotherhood on this trip. They had done, and you guys probably know, the West Point experience a couple of times under John Hines in the previous few years. So he did not want to repeat that, especially with so many players coming back from the previous year. This is largely the same group that John Hines had 1 year ago, with a couple of exceptions. So he tried to mix it up, and when the Devils got the invitation last year from the National Hockey League to go to Europe, this ownership group and this management group seized that opportunity. It kind of struck me how regimented the trip was for the team, not necessarily for us. We, as a group, had maybe 1 day off to ourselves when we were in Switzerland, and we enjoyed that very much. But you have to understand, the Devils had a schedule here as a team. They had team dinners. They had things set out for the group as a whole. There was one night in Switzerland where the team went out to dinner, and they simply wanted to talk about goals, individual and team goals as a group, what they wanted to set out and do for the upcoming season. And that probably doesn't work for every group, but I think with this group, it was a good idea. It's a communicative group. It's an intelligent group. It's a group that embraces each other, that can kind of talk things out in that situation. And just going back to what I said a few minutes ago, guys, that chip on the shoulder mentality, that can be a very galvanizing thing for a team if they all rally around that same thing. And they hear the mutterings around the NHL. They see what's going on, and websites and preseason prognostications about last year being something that was very admirable, but would be something very hard to repeat this year. A lot of people looked at Carolina as a team that was going to crack the playoff party this year. Buffalo got better. And a lot of people speculated of the 8 teams that made the playoffs last year, which one was going to come out. And maybe the Devils were an obvious choice to fit that description. And they're defiant. They don't want to be that. And anything that they can do to come together as a team early, I think they realized was going to help that quest. So to answer your question, I think it was a long trip, but I think for the team, it was a really positive one. A lot of the guys got a lot out of it, and in particular for guys like Hischier and Mueller as it related to Switzerland, for guys like Lack, Johansson, and Bratt, who unfortunately got injured. The trip to Sweden was a very big deal. And I think, I can't predict the future, but I do know this ownership group embraced the trip to Europe. And I think if the opportunity does present itself again in the future, they're going to seize it. Those 12 afternoon games that the Devils have scheduled at home this year, that's no coincidence. They're kind of looking at the European market. And remember, guys, when a game starts at 1 o'clock Eastern time at Prudential Center, that means it's starting at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in a lot of European cities. They're looking at that European market in terms of, branding the team more expansively. And it's a big deal when players in Europe see the Devils in their own market as well. So it's just something to keep an eye on in the future. I loved the trip. It was a long trip, but I got a lot out of it personally, guys.
That's awesome.
Indeed. Steve, you talk about this brotherhood. I mean, I took some notes in the last 3 games. The way the Devils are playing, it seems like the Devils have a half a step, faster speed over their opponents. Their breakout passes from their own zone is faster, more accurate, crisp, and it's lightning speed at this point. Their face-offs, I mean, they're winning face-offs now, unlike last year. But most importantly, what I've noticed is the grit is there. Miles Wood, chip tooth off the, getting the puck off the tooth, no problem. Back in the game. Nico Hischier, same thing. High stick to the mouth, got fixed up in the locker room. Yeah, and he's back, and he wins the face-off on the power play. I mean, this team is playing for each other, and you can see it right now, and they seem to be in playoff form, and we're only 3 games in. I mean, are you seeing the same thing I am? I mean, this is like a different team on a different level from last year, after losing Tampa Bay.
The Nico thing was interesting to me because it took the referees, if you recall, in Sunday's game so long to actually sort out the penalty that Nico had time to go into the locker room, down the tunnel. They stop the bleeding. They stick some cotton in the nose, and then he's back to take the very next face-off. So, that to me was terrific to see. In all the things that you just mentioned, the face-off win percentage, I think, affects a lot of the other things that you're talking about. Their breakout passes are better, and your breakout passes are going to be better when you control the puck initially off a face-off. We crunched some numbers at the start of the game today. Travis Zajac, Pavel Zacha, and Blake Coleman were all better than 60% effective in face-offs in the opening 2 games. You talked about the struggle last year. John Hines reminded us today they were 30th out of 31 teams last year in face-off win percentage. That had to change. That affects so many different things. It affects your power play. When you lose an initial face-off, you basically lose the first 25 seconds of your power play when you give up control of the puck and the other team gets a clear. On your penalty kill, obviously, it flips the other way. So all of those things are very important. Pavel Zacha today had very limited playing time, and I thought he was extraordinary in the 6-0 win over the Capitals, even though he hasn't collected a point just yet. There's a crispness about the team today. And I think that one of the pleasant things that the fans are enjoying here in the opening week of the season is that these 3 wins have come in very different fashions. Obviously, the Capitals game was seized much earlier than the 60-minute mark of the game. There was the game against Edmonton where it could have gone either way, where you're looking at it late second period. And today they just take it. At the start of the third period, they just take it. They get a little bit of a fortunate sequence with Kyle Palmieri on his second goal of the season. But basically, they busted out second goal of the game, I should say, today. But they busted out of the gate in the third period in very impressive fashion. And you almost sense that once Palmieri tied the game today, that something was going to happen in their favor in the moments that followed. And sure enough, less than 3 minutes later, Jean-Sebastien D scores what ultimately would prove to be the game-winning goal. They're looking good right now. I try not to read too much into 3 results here, and I think everybody would be wise to do the same. But this is the start you want. They did not have to chase it at any point last year, and I think they understand the value of not being in that position. It's 3 games, it's 3 wins, and I don't think they look at it as anything other than that. Now, with that said, it's a home-heavy schedule here in October. The dog days are coming as early as November. If you look at the November schedule, guys, they're only going to play 4 games at home in the entire month. So I think they understand the importance of banking these wins and then taking them and putting themselves in a strong position as the weeks commence and the weather here gets a little bit colder. The confidence I think that they have really stems from this group understanding it's a really well-coached team, guys. And I think that starts with the acknowledgement of Taylor Hall basically bringing that to the forefront last year. He openly said in his career and the 6 years that he played in Edmonton, he has never had a level of coaching that he's experienced before John Hines was having Hall under his umbrella here for the last couple of years. And that resulted, of course, in the best year of Taylor Hall's hockey life last year and the first ever Devil to win the Hart Trophy. That's the effect on Hall. But honestly, I think the entire team feels that and understands that right now. We don't know where this is going. I don't think the roster that we see right now is going to be the same one that we see at the end of the season. I think there are going to be tweaks. There might even be a very important addition coming along at some point. But this is where you want to be right now. They've showed themselves well in the opening week.
Steve, I have a quick question because one of our Facebook followers, Jake, had a kind of an interesting question to ask you as well. You've had the opportunity to work with Chico and you've had the opportunity to work with Dano, and both of them bring a lot of excitement into the booth and kind of a different personality. Does Dano get extremely excited for the games? It comes across as TV where he wants to jump through the TV that he gets that excited. What was the difference between working with Chico and working with Dano?
Yeah, it's a good point by the person who brings that, because I think the passion level of each of them is pretty equal. The only difference that I can tell you that's tangible for me, they look at the game completely differently. The one thing about Chico always saw the game, as you might expect, through the eyes of a goaltender. And that doesn't mean that goaltending is his only area of expertise. He saw the game through the eyes of the shooter as well, where Dano, I think, more looks at the game in terms of position, in terms of physicality, which was obviously his calling card for the last 20 years. And I think that the thing that Dano always wrestles with is trying to rationalize what the game is now as opposed to what the game was when he first broke into the league a very long time ago. Dano was drafted in 1982. By the time he really found his footing in the National Hockey League in the late 80s, let's say, you're talking about an NHL that was a very different experience from what it is now. And I think very often Kenny finds himself relating the game today and contrasting it to what it was when he was a player in the National Hockey League, where there was more of a self-policing by the players. I still talk with Chico a lot. As you know, he's still around the team today. After a very brief retirement, he came back. He's on the radio side now with Matt Lachlan and doing a terrific job. We always talk about the Devils on every road trip. We catch up in some way, shape, or form and digest things. It's a different dynamic. The other thing you have to realize, guys, is that when Chico and I first started working together, well, just to take it back a little bit, my first season was 2006, 2007, when I began to fill in for Mike Emmerich when he was the play-by-play voice of the Devils. And when time went along, I started to do more and more games, and Doc was more in demand doing NBC or whatever national assignments for the league. It got to the point where when I finally took over the full-time play-by-play job, my first season was 2011, 2012. You got to remember, Chico had already been in the booth for 16 years, okay? So what I did was I found myself adapting more and more to Chico Resch. By the time Kenny came along, after I had 3 seasons under my belt with Chico, I was sort of that guy with, for lack of a better phrase, the booth pedigree, you know, and then Kenny comes in, and it's kind of Kenny probably adapting a little bit to me and fitting into my nuances. And now here we are in our 4th year together, where I think really by this point we have a real rhythm where we understand each other, when the other guy wants to talk, when you expect the other guy to get in, what you know the other guy wants to bring to the table, and when you really have to surrender the pulpit to the other guy because you know, okay, something just happened and this is all Kenny. This is something that Kenny's very passionate about. And, you know, it takes time to develop that, when to know to give him the bigger platform. And now 4 years into this, I think we're kind of mastering that a little bit more, which I can only hope makes for a better experience for all the folks who are listening to the game out there. I hope that answers your question, but it's different. With every partner that you work with, it's going to be different. The dynamic is never, ever, ever the same.
It doesn't. I love listening to both of you because you both bring such a good dynamic.
Well,
So,
that means
Steve,
a lot to me, Julio. You know, the only thing I can tell you is last year we had such a terrific year in terms of viewership. It was something that took us very pleasantly by surprise. We had such a jump in viewership really over the previous 2 seasons. And some of that has to do with the marketing of the team, which has been far more aggressive than it had been in previous years. But I also think, you know, we have a pretty good crew. And I'm not only talking about, you know, the people that you see on the air, Kenny and myself and Bryce Salvador and Erica Wachter after Deb Placey was there for so many years. I think that our viewers have kind of looked at us as kind of that comfortable shoe that you could put on, and you're actually, you know, looking forward to not only seeing the game, but seeing it through the lens that you kind of expect us to give you. And, you know, it took a while. You know, for me, I actually stepped into this booth replacing one of the legendary broadcasters of our time in Mike Emmerich, who over 2 stints with the Devils had been in that booth for 21 years. And I kind of recognized the responsibility of doing that and what was on my shoulders. But it was always something where I knew that ultimately I would kind of have to find my own way with this. And, you know, now 8 years into it as the full-time voice of the team, you know, I kind of see and sense a comfort level with the people who root for this team where, you know, they've embraced the broadcast a little more. at this point, and that kind of stuff is always good for me and good for our team because we do work very hard at it. And honestly, the team itself, not only the wins and the success of the team, guys, but the manner in which they play, that's so important to the presentation of what we do. And the way this team plays, a very young, energetic team, that kind of comes through, I think, when we do the games here, and particularly for the last 2 years.
So, Steve, I got to ask, what was it like feeling or taking over for Doc Emmerich? Knowing his, what he did for the Devils and his career. How'd that feel? As becoming the next guy, because I know sometimes those roles are hard to fill.
Well, the thing about Doc is that I remember when I first joined the crew in 2006, and I always tried to take more from Doc, not necessarily as a broadcaster, but as a person. The story I share with people from time to time, I remember the very first game that I contributed to as part of our crew. This was in the fall of 2006. And we had opened the season that year in Carolina. And I remember we had a production meeting the night before that first game. And the thing that struck me about Doc that always stays with me today is that he and I were set to be on the same broadcast for the first time. And Doc had been doing this for quite some time. He had already had better than 2,000 games under his belt. But what always struck me is that in that first production meeting, he treated me as an equal. He wanted to know what I thought about the matchup, what I thought about the broadcast, the storylines that we can bring to the table. And that always stayed with me moving forward because I always thought that that would be up to me someday to maybe pass that along to other members of the crew. I understand what he is and his importance to the history of the game. His knowledge is encyclopedic. His play-by-play is extraordinary, and his professionalism is second to none. But all of those things I kind of took and said, if I was the choice to succeed him, it must mean I'm doing something right. It was Lou Lamoriello who at the time brought me aboard as part of the broadcast. And I remember the conversation I had with Lou when I was offered the job to succeed Doc. And Lou had told me in no uncertain terms, make this job yours. And I told him, look, there's some pressure succeeding a Hall of Fame broadcaster, but not only that, stepping into a booth where Chico Resch had, a very comfortable relationship with the play-by-play guy for the previous 16 years. And Lou had told me, number one, don't worry about replacing the Hall of Famer. Don't worry about Chico either. Just do your job. And if you do your job, everything else is going to take care of itself. I thought about that a lot in especially that first season where I took over for Doc in 2011, 2012. And in some way, that's always stayed with me years later. Doc and I communicate still pretty frequently. As a matter of fact, he texted me yesterday about a couple of things, and I texted him back, and we always wish each other well. We're always watching each other. Even when Doc's back home in Michigan, to this day, he still watches a lot of Devils hockey, so he's always keeping tabs, on things that we do. So the relationship there has always been very good. But I get it. I understand the importance of Emmerich to Devils history, and that's something that's never left me. I understand that.
Steve, you know what I mean, after you started filling in, Doc's shoes, I really felt that you did it your way. You didn't, emulate Doc Emmerich. You did it your own way because when Doc came back to the Devils, if you remember, it was around 93 season. That was like the Martin Brodeur legend was like literally started growing from there. And it was almost about 20 years of just Stanley Cup contending hockey. And when you came in after the 2012 season, you kept it exciting. The lockout, the new ownership, the rebuild, Marty Brodeur, his last game. I mean, you had some big challenges. And now, 8 years later, you've got an exciting team to call now. I mean, this has got to be well worth the wait. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, the way I would look at that is my first season as a full-time play-by-play guy, the Devils went to the Stanley Cup final. My first year was 2011, 2012, and Pete DeBoer had what I think was a very, very good team, one that was capable of really wearing down other teams with the way that it would cycle the puck and they could dominate games physically. Those teams that had Ilya Kovalchuk and Zach Parise and a lot of big, strong forwards. And it took a turn for the worse shortly after that, where these were lean years. I understand that. There were 5 years for these fans to experience without Stanley Cup playoffs, which has happened many, many times to teams in NHL history, but it's something I think Devils fans were very unaccustomed to. And, my fear over that time was that, the energy level of the broadcast might not be what fans are used to, but maybe that had a lot to do with what we were watching each and every night, even though in my heart of hearts, I know that I always tried to make it as interesting as it possibly could be. And when this team really began to turn a corner, and I'll point not to last season when they finally got to the playoffs, but that first year under John Hines when they got their respect back and they were a very competitive group and they were hanging around in the playoff chase for most of the season. It probably escaped them with about a week and a half left in the regular season. I think the fans at that point actually began to see the light at the end of the tunnel, even though they stumbled a little bit the year after that. But it was a different thing for so many parts of the fan base here, too, because this is a fan base that's not used to a long rebuild. They had never experienced that. You mentioned Marty Brodeur when talking about the Doc years. One of the things that always stood out to me when Brodeur reflected on his career with the Devils, and I remember him talking intimately about this when he was approaching the all-time wins record to break the mark set by Patrick Roy. He said, and I'm almost quoting here, maybe paraphrasing a little bit, under Lou Lamoriello, every year I went into training camp and I expected to contend for the Stanley Cup. How many players who had a career as long as Marty Brodeur can actually in their heart of hearts say that? But Brodeur was right. He would go into training camp each and every year, and tongue-in-cheek, he would say to Lou, "We rebuilding this year?" And Lou would laugh. "Are you kidding?" It wasn't like that. And it was a period of time that is so unique in the league where this team contended year after year after year with 9 division titles in a very short span of time, and they kept contending despite the fact that Lou did not have the luxury of a top 10 draft pick for 15 consecutive years. I mean, think about that. You're not drafting top 10 for 15 straight years, and still you're putting that product of excellence on the ice. That's admirable. A lot of general managers in the league cannot aspire to something like that. So you take it to this point where inevitably you were going to go through a time where you needed to build it again from the ground up. And Ray Shero turns out to be the guy who might be the perfect person to be tasked with that. And now you're fortunate a little bit in that you've won a lottery. You were able to bring Nico Hischier in. But beyond that, what he's done on the trade market here for the last couple of years has been very significant. The lost art of the hockey trade is something that I miss very much. And Ray has brought that back in this market. Sammy Vatanen for Adam Henry, Kyle Palmieri in a real hockey trade, Marcus Johansson in a real hockey trade, and of course Taylor Hall for Adam Larson. And you can only wonder what's next here. This is a group that excites me right now, and it's a group that comes along at a time where I think the fan base really, really needs it, and now it's starting to get fun again.
Steve, I have to say, Sam was mentioning when you were coming into your own and you really made this, the Devils broadcast your own. I have to tell you, even through those years where the Devils were down, the one constant that we could always look forward to is just the way you interact with the audience, the way that you call the games, the way that we could be down 5-0 and the Devils score and you still call it as if they were winning a game when they score a goal, and everything that you do. The fans, I could probably speak for everybody. We all can't tell you how much we appreciate you. Rob on our Facebook group actually, he wanted to see if you could come outside of the fire section after next game to take a picture with everybody, which is section 19. But it's really admirable, like that, just the energy, and it has to be hard through those tough years, and when they're not winning, to keep that energy and keep that optimism and everything going. So, from the fans to you, just thank you so much for everything that you do. It's incredible to listen to you every game.
Well, that's incredibly nice, and I'd be happy to do that for you guys. That means a lot that you would say that, and I'm glad you found some joy in those games when the team wasn't doing well. And to be honest, those are the fans I feel best about right now, as the team has turned a corner. Those people who turned up every night, for those Tuesday night games against Carolina. That might have not been the sexiest ticket on the planet at the time, but now we're looking at a point where you're showing up for that same game maybe this season, and it's kind of a big deal. I know I've always tried to do my best by the fans, and I don't work for the team as much as I work for the people who watch the team. That's always kind of been my mantra. So I really thank you for saying that. That means a lot. And hopefully I can continue to do my best by you guys.
Steve, it's Shorts Guy again. I have to switch gears because you and I have a second love that we share, and that's the New York Red Bulls. What do you think going into the playoffs? I know as one of the capos for the Viking Army, I'm expecting a championship finally, but what do you think our chances are going into the playoffs this year?
Yeah, I'm back behind the mic for Sunday's game against Philadelphia, by the way. So I'm balancing a pretty busy couple of weeks here down the home stretch of the season. Look, I can only tell you this. It's probably the most complete team they've had in the 23-year history of the league. It's something where it's also so fragile, regardless of how good you are, because you're talking about a couple of rounds of playoffs, two-leg series in order to get to the final. And then if you get to the final, it all comes down to that one day where you have to be near perfect, and the pressure is on a group that hasn't won for its fan base in the history of the league, the whole enchilada, MLS Cup. And this is a very mature group. It's a complete team. It's been such a joy to be around that group. They are as good as anyone. They are as athletic as anyone. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to play out the way you want it to play. I think they have positioned themselves as well as they ever have in the 2+ decades here. There's a great chance that they're going to finish first overall, which is a very big deal in MLS to me, and the opportunity to win MLS Cup at home. It's going to be a riveting final couple of weeks here. And Bradley Wright Phillips is not going to win MVP of that league, but he's going to finish a very admirable second to Joseph Martinez. He's been that good.
Well, Steve, this was a great interview. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on to the Let's Go Devils podcast, and we really, really appreciate it, and we hope to have you sometime soon. I could talk for hours with you. This is great.
Oh, anytime, guys. It's a long season, and hopefully we touch base again before it's done. And please reach out for your fan base before any Devils game. And honestly, if there's any time at all that I can make for you guys, absolutely will. I appreciate you having me on. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Oh, Steve, by the way, just before we let you go, send Doc Emmerich a text, because he's actually going to be on the hot seat in a few weeks on the podcast real soon.
Okay, I'll tell him what to expect. It's all good.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's Steve Cangialosi, Devils play-by-play announcer on the MSG Network. Guys,
Amazing.
That was awesome.
I'm blown away. I'm exhausted.
Dude,
Season 2, Episode 6, The Cangy Man. This is one of the best podcasts we've ever had.
Agreed.
The most commented podcast of all Devils podcasts in the history of New Jersey Devils podcasts.
Thank you.
That was a
Gina.
great interview.
Thank you, Durango Steve. Thank you, everybody. Eric Burns. Sorry we couldn't read any more. Anybody else's? John, thank you. Pete. Hey, what's up, Pete? Thank you, guys.
Pete, what's going on?
It's like I wish we could read more of your comments. I'm so sorry, but like if you notice, I'm constantly looking down, reading what everybody's saying. Sometimes you'll see me chuckle, kind of like off screen here, but that was insane. That was incredible.
That was insane. And also, you could really thank us. You could really thank us even more if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Right now, we have, I think, last time I checked, 63 subscribers before the show. I think we're probably going up. But also, if you see behind me, there's a T-shirt. There's a T-shirt behind Short Sky.
Thank you, Pat.
But you could buy a T-shirt, the Let's Go Devils podcast
Thank you,
T-shirt,
Roger.
through our Facebook page for $20, and you would be able to help fund our $35 million jet.
Previously mentioned.
So we could go on these road trips together as fans, and this is something new that we're going to try now. Is we want to start encouraging fans buying T-shirts from us. So we're one of our first fans that actually purchased a T-shirt through our web store. If you go to our Facebook page and hit the Shop Now button, and I think he's fan of the week is Rob Klobosis
There he
Jr.,
is.
who bought a Let's Go Devils podcast T-shirt for $20. And that $20 doesn't go to me, Shorts Guy, or Beer Baron. It goes towards this jet, and we have to sell 1.75 million of these T-shirts so we could have this private jet and go to Devils games on the road together and take over cities, NHL cities, as we need to beat some teams, especially in Philadelphia and New York. So anyway, that's a nice plug for Rob, and let's plug
And big
also
shout out
his
to the
Facebook
Devil,
group.
a big shout out to the Devil Diehards too.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to meet a bunch of the Devil Diehards on opening night. Really a bunch of great, just awesome Devil fans. Took a group picture. Just a great group that we got involved with, and we're going to continue to be involved with. So well done, Rob. Creating that group out of nothing, and with a lot of followers so far. So definitely an exciting group to be a part of for sure.
And they do this picture in front of Section 19. I used to be part of the Section 19 Psychos years ago when I had those really nice fancy seats down below at the Fire Lounge. I don't know what they call it now, but they do a little selfie. I don't know what they call it. Is it the Devil's Die Hard selfie? I mean, you were part of that, Shorts guy.
Yeah. No, everyone just got together with a picture. We were, very lucky to have Arlette there on Thursday, and I think Pete, organist Pete, stopped by today, took a picture with him. So it's they just gather around, get a picture, and just very much like what we do. Like, we're celebrating all the positives about being a Devils fan, and that's what Devils diehards are doing, just celebrating the positives of being a Devils fan, which is fantastic. That's what we need more of.
Yeah, and Jake, by the way, our buddy Jake is saying he hasn't been to the Rock in many years because he's in Canada. Dude, anytime you come down, if any of us are at the game, let us know before hit us up on Facebook, on the group, or on YouTube or wherever, and we'll try and meet up with you guys. And I'll tell you what, I'll put this out there as a promise. If in the next game that I get a chance to go to, we'll try and get a bunch of people together. We'll have a round of beers on somebody, but not me. But we'll all get together and we'll have a good time. We'll have a good time. We'll have a couple of beers. We'll have a couple of laughs. But I'm so pumped up for this season. After the Cangy interview, I just wish they were playing right now. Like, just talking to Cangialosi, it's just.
I believe the replay is on right now. I believe the replay is on. I know what I'm going to do. Yeah, no, I really hope they keep it up as well. And if I can formulate some words right now, 3-0 is a great way to start, but it's a long season. Three down. Was it 79 to go? So it's a while.
Let me tell you, this past week after the Lacey Mark interview, and when we put out the Cangialosi was going to be our guest today, we have fans. We seriously, and I'm not kidding around here. Let's Go Devils podcast is seriously international. It's not just Canada.
Yeah,
we have fans like all over Europe, Australia. Sweden. Henrik from Denmark actually reached out to us, and you took a picture with him. Australia, Switzerland started to come in the picture, probably because of Nico, and probably because of the game in Bern. I'm just amazed how this community it's such a tight knit community, but we come from all walks of life everywhere, and just see the demographics. George. And so one day I hope that we're popular in Africa, the Middle East, spreading the Devils hockey all over the place. That will happen one day, and I think it's going to happen because of the Let's Go Devils podcast.
We will unite,
and we're really
world peace. We're Devil fandom all in one.
Sam.
Sorry,
Sam. I love the fact that this all started because I went to your house after the Devils failed to make the playoffs and we were 3 points out, and you just wanted to complain about the season that was, and now we have this podcast that's international. Less than 2 years later. That's how this all started. If nobody knows the story, I went to Sam's house after the last game of not last season, the season before, and he just said, "Hey, you want to go online?" Because Sam had been moonlighting as Mickey Mouse online and complaining about the Devils being 3 points out because he had nothing to do to vent his frustration otherwise. And we complained for about an hour. We talked about the game, talked about the season, and now here we are 2.5 years later talking to international, talking to the likes of Steve Cangialosi, and I heard you mention Doc Emmerich there too. So insane how quickly this has grown.
I had to drop it in there. I had to leak it out. Now the cat's out of the bag.
Cat's out of the bag.
You know what though?
Yeah.
Not only is this due to Sam, Short Sky, the fact that the three of us got together to do this. It's everybody on Facebook. It's everybody on every platform that we have. Even our two fans on Stitch or Switch or whatever that is. Twitch. Honestly, if it weren't for you, if it weren't for you guys, we would just be sitting at a bar right now talking to each other, or sitting on the couch talking to each other. But honestly, this is what makes every Sunday night so fun. Even if the Devils weren't playing good right now, we'd still be here talking about it. Maybe not as happy and jovial, but You know, it's everybody on Facebook Live. Like I'm reading all these comments as they're going by, and I can't like keep up with it. John saying Doc with a bunch of exclamation points. Trust me, John. When we heard about it, I nearly asked myself. So let's just. Yeah, we were that excited as well, and we are still that excited. I can't wait. It's insane. But even tonight with Cangy, like when it broke that we're gonna have Cangialosi on the one thing I forgot to ask him, I nearly fainted. I was like, this is crazy. Like you just said, I can't believe where we are at this point, and how this it's wild.
It is wild. I mean, the whole podcast started because I was really angry at the team. I mean, I think they lost 16 games in a row, and it's like, now you tank.
Wait,
you could have had McDavid. You could have had Austin Matthews. But what's up?
Somebody in the Facebook. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but somebody said do it live. We did it live last year. We had a live event last year, Matt. We are going to have another live event. And speaking to my father-in-law, he said whenever we want to do it, we could do a live event.
Yeah. We definitely got some live event plans in the works. Yep. You know, first we got to work on logistics and find, make sure that the right people, are going to be there. It's also a scheduling. Also, money talks, sometimes, we're available for bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, sweet 16 parties. We will go anywhere as long as we have that money in our bank account. Let me tell you, we can be persuaded to go to your event and have the Let's Go Devils podcast be part of your day. Okay.
Hey,
so it's definitely possible.
The beer's cold. We'll be there.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And, and of course we're going to definitely hook up with the Devils diehards. Also, you saw Trudy the other day. My good friend Trudy, Devils fan club. I'm telling you, isn't she a nice lady? I mean, she's really
she was
nice.
Awesome. She was awesome.
She's very,
she, I just wanted to meet her, shake her hand, just, put a face to a name and stuff like that. And, get our word out to her and then, try to build a relationship there. Plus I got to ask her, I just mentioned, about the Red Bulls for Cangialosi, and I looked at her, I said, you don't really get to watch many games, do you? She said, no, maybe like the last 10 minutes of the third period, which I can relate over at the Red Bull games, being not watching anything and still having to pay for a ticket, which she does as well. But it's, they're a great organization that's been around forever. And, definitely another partner that we're going to have at some point is the hope there.
Oh, absolutely. Potential road trips before we get on our plane. We gotta crawl before we walk.
We're getting
right. We'll take a bus.
Those old smelly 1975 like GMC vans, carpeting in the inside, spray paint a huge devil on the side of it. We're going on the road, boys.
Like the bus and slap shot, making it look mean.
Yes. Yeah. What the hell are you doing? Oh my god!
Oh my gosh!
Just to jump back into the season. This is only 3 games in. If they can keep this pace, it's crazy. It's like you think about it. Everybody's drooling over how Austin Matthews has scored 10 goals and blah blah blah, and you look at what Kyle Palmieri is quietly doing, and you look at what this team is quietly doing, and it's. Steve said it multiple times, like how they're clicking on all cylinders because they're all buying into this idea of a brotherhood, of a team, that it's not just like, oh yeah, it's just lip service. Like they're actually doing it. If they can keep moving forward. And I know that somebody just mentioned it. Like I said, I've been trying to look at the Facebook Live. I know somebody just mentioned like, oh, he dropped the hint that there might be a huge trade coming. You never know, but he kind of did say that it's still open to possibilities. Like, look at all these different trades that Shiro has put together. They always seem to work. You know what I mean? They always seem to fit in. They always seem to work. There could be something in the pipeline. Who knows? But I guarantee you this. His track record so far as the Devils GM is, even if you look at, because people were freaking out in the summertime. We didn't sign Carlson. We didn't sign this guy. We didn't do this. We didn't do that. Van Riem's like, who's out for 3 to 4 weeks or whatever he is.
Yep.
We didn't do this. We didn't do that. Look at what he's done. Look at what he's done.
I admit I was the one that was freaking out. I was like, spend money.
Well, we were
spend money.
I think we're all sitting there on free agent day on July 1st, like just going back and forth in the group text, going, "Are they going to do something? What's going to happen?" And there was nothing.
I mean, yeah, true. Everybody wants to know, but yeah, for sure.
We definitely learned last year that anyone is tradable. Anyone can be moved, but Shiro will only make the move if it's the right move for the team, not just to get somebody because someone came calling or because someone's trying to dump something. You know, you have to take the team. If the team is clicking right now, you have to go with it and see where it's going to go, and then maybe fill some deficiencies that come up later on. And I think, we've only played 3 games. I think we bounced back very well from that long trip. Getting 4 days off. But, we've got a decent stretch this week. We got a day off tomorrow, Tuesday game, home game against Dallas, day off, home game against Colorado Thursday, day off, away to Philadelphia on Saturday. So I think by our podcast next Sunday, we're going to know a lot more about how this team is looking. And I don't want to mention it, but, we may look at our first loss this week. I hope not, but you never know. I'm just trying to be a realist.
For sure.
Boo!
Yeah, I know. Someone's got to be the guy.
You're the low energy guy.
No, I'm not the low energy guy. Get out of here. I'm just saying it's, what, eventually, I mean, I would love to be wrong and go 82-0. That would be phenomenal to go wrong and be 82-0. I know that's very difficult in this game is to go undefeated like that, especially in such a long season that has such long stretches, back-to-back games. But I do love what we're doing now, and I do think that this week there's going to be a lot of hockey played, and it's going to show us a lot about the team this week.
Dude, I'll tell you what, the last time that the Devils went 82-0, or the only time that I've ever seen them come close to going 82-0 is NHL 2014, and I went 81-1. I went 81-1 because I was about to play a game against the Anaheim Ducks, and I accidentally hit the button to simulate the game, and they made me lose, even though I was 79-0 at that point, and like blowing away every stat. Wayne Gretzky was like a nobody compared to the guy that I created in the game, and I lost 1 game. But then I swept the entire Stanley Cup, series, so it was fine. But I mean,
and it doesn't bother you at all. I can tell it just doesn't bother you at all.
It still pisses me off to this day. It still pisses me off. Like the CGI in this game was like, you know what? This team's 79-0, and they've been blowing everybody out. We'll make them lose to the Ducks. I was like, But anyways, like, yeah, there's a lot of great things and a lot of positivity that's surrounding this team right now. And a lot of people in the Facebook group keep saying, like, there's no. Eric Burns said there's no mention on ESPN. That will never happen because it's the Devils and it's hockey.
And ESPN doesn't have a contract for it, so why are they going to mention something that they don't have a contract for? And unfortunately, that's the sports world and business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, unfortunately, sports world and business. They're more of a soccer station now. With all the soccer they're gobbling up. We'll never see anything on ESPN anymore.
No, and I mean honestly, and a lot of people are like, "Yo, the Leafs are getting all the headlines and this, that, and the other thing." Good. You know what? Let them get all the headlines. Yeah. Let us sneak under the radar the whole season. Have that chip on the shoulder. Like, don't, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like this team is built for that kind of underdog mentality, and it almost serves them to be overshadowed by any team and every team.
Guys, I got to read some of these comments. Jake Wakely. What are the chances Sam becomes a play-by-play guy with the excitement he has for this team? He wants to go to a game with us. Thank you, Jake. Maybe one day it'll happen. I don't know. You never know. Nope, I could be an emergency backup broadcaster for either Steve or Matt Lockwood.
Like an e-bug.
Yeah, like an e-bug. But guys, this was a great podcast.
Agreed.
Big thanks.
Best one yet.
Big thanks to Steve Cangialosi for coming on. I mean, he really had a busy schedule, and he made some time for us. I mean, he just worked all day, people.
It was amazing.
He worked all day long. I mean, from probably 6 a.m., the game, comes home, probably has dinner.
Then talks to us.
And then he talks to us.
Talks to us, hangs out with us.
Yeah.
And all of our friends.
On the Let's Go Devils podcast, where you can find it on letsgodevils.com, Spreaker.com, Facebook Live, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube Live, on Twitch. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel because we got a little contest going. And we're trying to do one contest at a time, but we haven't hit our goal. So I'm going to let Shorts Guy explain this little contest about subscribing to our YouTube channel. How do you get there? How do you get there?
All right. So go to YouTube, search Let's Go Devils podcast, hit subscribe, and when we hit 100 subscribers, we're going to take all the subscriber names, we're going to enter them into a contest, and the winner will get one of these awesome Devils podcast t-shirts just for subscribing. If you've already subscribed, make sure
you're already in.
You're already in if you're already subscribed. So if you're in, if you're subscribed, you're in. If you haven't subscribed, do so before we get to 100. We should be getting to 100 soon, and then we'll have our contest. We may or may not do a contest for later on, but subscribe.
Also, do you mind to model that awesome sweatshirt you're wearing? Right, just to tease our fans. It's just an awesome sweatshirt.
Yeah, if you take a look here, we've got some new merch coming. This is a little bit of a tease.
Yes,
new merch coming. Let's Go Devils podcast merch.
That's
new
sexy
merch
right there.
It really is.
Yes,
so look up for new merch as well.
And that is officially Beer Baron font that's written in.
It is.
That's right.
Let's Go
That's right. It might look. Hey, look. It might look similar to something else out there. It's not. That was done by hand. I know what I'm doing, folks.
Yes.
So be on the lookout. This is right now. This is a 1 of 1, but I don't plan it to be only a 1 of 1. So.
And if you just happen to log in right now, look, the show will be on archives on all these places that we said we were on, but also you can find us on iTunes and probably in the next hour or two of this broadcast, iHeartRadio.com as well. We're on the iHeartRadio app. We're everywhere. We're expanding. And we want to thank you, the listener and viewers of this podcast, for making this possible. Without you guys, we wouldn't have any filler material for, And also, just so you know, for the first time on the podcast, I actually have written notes. Normally I don't have notes. I just wing it. But this time around, I have notes. Maybe I'll put this on eBay, and all the proceeds contribute to our $35 million jet. I think that's about it, guys, right? Any last words?
So well.
Hey, I thank you guys. I apologize for the crying baby in the background, but my daughter's a little upset. So she's upset that the podcast is ending.
It's all well.
It's all good.
Yep.
It's all good. All right, so we'll be back next Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. This is the Let's Go Devils podcast signing off. Till next time, let's go Devils.